When you live in an HOA neighborhood long enough, you start to recognize the smell of entitlement before you even see it. Ours came in the form of Vivien Blackwater, the kind of woman who wore her power like perfume. Everything about her screamed control. From her pastel cardigans and clipboard of community violations, to the smug way she'd tilt her sunglasses whenever she saw me working on something she didn't approve of. So when I noticed my front gate swinging freely one morning, the lock missing, chain hanging loose like a snapped necklace, I already knew who the culprit was before I found her. It started because I installed a new automatic gate. Nothing fancy. Just a solid aluminum swing gate with a keypad entry, mainly to keep delivery drivers from turning my driveway into a turnaround spot. Vivien had pitched a fit when she saw it. She claimed it interrupted the neighborhood's visual uniformity. That's HOA speak for, I don't like that you did something without asking me first. I told her it was within my rights, showed her the bylaws, and even sent a courtesy notice to the HOA board. But Vivien wasn't the type to lose gracefully. 2 weeks later, I came home to find the gate unlocked and the access panel slightly open, like someone had tampered with it. I checked the keypad, it was fine. The lock, however, was gone. My first thought was maybe a thief, until I spotted something that made my jaw tighten. A single brass key lying half hidden in the grass near the mailbox. It was my spare gate key. The one I kept in a small magnetic holder by the meter box. Out of sight, but apparently not out of Vivien's reach. I knocked on her door that evening, calm as could be. She opened it with her usual expression of mild disgust, like she'd just smelled cheap coffee. "Vivien," I said evenly, "you wouldn't happen to know why my gate key's missing, would you?" Her eyebrows shot up like I'd accused her of arson. "I don't appreciate your tone, Mr. Hale. I had to access your property earlier. There was a landscaping issue along our shared boundary. HOA regulations permit temporary access. Without notice? Without permission? And you took my key." She crossed her arms. "You left it unsecured. I merely borrowed it. I was protecting community standards." I exhaled slowly, counting to 3. Protecting community standards doesn't mean breaking and entering. Her lips tightened. "Don't be dramatic. If you didn't have that ridiculous gate, none of this would be necessary." That was when I realized Vivien wasn't just nosy. She believed she had jurisdiction over everything within eyesight. My fence, my driveway, my life. I thanked her, turned around, and mentally started planning my counterstrike. That night, I changed the entire lock system. Replaced the manual latch with a digital keypad that generated new codes daily. The keyhole was gone completely, which meant no more borrowing. And just for fun, I installed a motion-activated camera above the gate. The next morning, as I sipped my coffee on the porch, I heard the sound of metal clinking. There she was, at 8:07 a.m., standing by my gate with her usual clipboard. She jiggled the latch, frowned, and tried to insert her purloined key into a hole that no longer existed. Then she spotted the camera lens. I swear, the look on her face was pure cinematic gold, a mix of confusion, offense, and dawning realization that her little empire had just shrunk by 6 feet of aluminum and a password she didn't have. That's when the emails started. The first came at 9:42 a.m. sharp. "Dear Mr. Hale, it has come to my attention that your new locking mechanism restricts HOA board access for inspection and emergency response. Please provide a key or code within 24 hours to avoid violation notice." I replied 3 minutes later. "Dear Ms. Blackwater, thank you for your concern. The HOA is welcome to request access in writing as per Section 4B, Line 6 of the bylaws. Until then, the gate remains secured for safety and privacy reasons. Have a delightful morning." I attached a screenshot of the bylaws just to twist the knife. By lunchtime, she was fuming. I saw her pacing on the sidewalk with her phone pressed to her ear, gesturing toward my property like she was reporting a national emergency. Later, my neighbor Marcus texted me, "Vivien's telling everyone you've compromised the security of the neighborhood." She's trying to rally a vote. I grinned. Of course she was. Vivien's weapon wasn't logic, it was gossip. She could turn a garden hose dispute into a federal case if it meant attention. So I decided to feed her just enough rope. I posted a short note on the neighborhood forum. Due to a recent theft of my gate key, the lock has been upgraded. If any board members misplace the old key, please let me know. There's a $75 lost key fee to cover replacement costs and reprogramming. The thread exploded within minutes. Neighbors chimed in, half of them laughing, the other half pretending to be scandalized. Someone even wrote, $75? That's cheaper than the HOA fines. I pretended not to notice the chaos I'd unleashed. That evening, Vivien stormed up my driveway again. This time she had backup, 2 HOA board members in matching polos, flanking her like a pair of obedient bodyguards. "You're being ridiculous, Mr. Hale," she said through clenched teeth. "Charging a board member for a key is not only inappropriate, it's illegal." "Illegal?" I asked mildly. "Because I asked for compensation for a stolen key? You're exploiting your neighbors," one of the polo men chimed in. "Really?" "Because my security was compromised by someone who admitted taking my key without consent. Seems like a fair trade, services rendered, key replaced, fee applied." Vivien's nostrils flared. "I will not pay your absurd little ransom." "Then don't," I said, smiling. "But the camera footage will remain archived with your face right there at the gate. You're free to explain that to the board if you'd like." Her expression flickered. It was the first time I'd seen her actually hesitate, a crack in the marble statue of authority she pretended to be. Then she turned sharply and walked off without another word, heels clicking like gunshots on concrete. That should have been the end of it, but this was Vivien. Losing wasn't in her vocabulary. By the next day, I received an official HOA violation notice citing non-compliance with community access standards. Apparently, my gate was now a threat to safety vehicles and maintenance personnel. Marcus dropped by later, chuckling as he handed me the notice. "You really poked the hive this time, man. Vivien's trying to get a special meeting scheduled." I shrugged. "Perfect. I'll bring popcorn." In truth, I was already planning my next move. If she wanted a meeting, she'd get one, but not the kind she expected. Because what Vivien didn't know was that I'd already reached out to the county code enforcement office. Turns out, her front hedges extended 3 feet into the public sidewalk, technically violating the same access laws she accused me of breaking. And the kicker? The HOA bylaws required compliance with county ordinances first. I didn't have to lift a finger. Just one polite email, one attached photo, and the wheels of bureaucracy began to turn. By Friday, a bright orange notice of violation tag fluttered from her hedges like a victory flag. I spotted her standing outside, fuming, phone glued to her ear again. She glanced toward my gate camera, muttered something, and stormed back inside. I raised my coffee mug in a silent toast. That weekend, the entire neighborhood buzzed with the latest drama. The HOA president's yard had been cited by the county, reported anonymously. Vivien's reputation as the queen of control had cracked, and I wasn't done yet. Because if she thought the lost key fee was a joke, she hadn't seen what I was about to invoice her for next. The following Monday, I woke to the sound of metal scraping outside. It wasn't the usual garbage truck or mail van. This was slower, deliberate, a kind of rhythmic grind that made my stomach tighten. I stepped onto the porch, coffee in hand, and there she was again. Vivien Blackwater, wearing oversized sunglasses like armor, stood beside 2 maintenance guys with bolt cutters. "Morning," I called out. "New hobby? Breaking and entering?" Vivien turned, plastering on that smile she used for board meetings, the one that said, "I'm being polite, but I'm about to ruin your day." She pointed toward the gate. "These men are here to remove an unauthorized obstruction to community access. You were given notice, Mr. Hale." "Obstruction?" I tilted my head. "You mean my gate, the one I installed legally and paid for?" The one you broke into. She ignored me, barking orders at the maintenance workers like a foreman. Cut it from the hinge side. He can replace it later once the board reviews his violations. The older of the two men looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, you sure you got authority for this? Looks like private property. Vivien snapped. The HOA board authorized this action. Funny, I said, pulling out my phone. Because the HOA's own bylaws say any modification or removal of homeowner property requires a court order or owner consent. I've got the PDF right here. I tapped the screen and aimed it toward her. Vivien's jaw twitched. Mr. Hale, I strongly suggest you step back before I call security. Perfect, I said, lowering my phone. Let's both call someone. I didn't call security. I called the county sheriff's non-emergency line. They arrived 15 minutes later, lights flashing just enough to draw an audience from nearby porches. Our neighborhood thrived on gossip, and nothing got the retirees moving faster than a patrol car in Vivien's orbit. Deputy Ramos stepped out, a calm man who'd clearly handled his share of HOA nonsense. Morning, folks. What seems to be the problem? Vivien stepped forward before anyone else could speak. Officer, thank goodness you're here. This homeowner has erected a non-compliant barrier and refused to provide emergency access. We're just attempting to restore lawful entry. Ramos glanced at me. That true? Not even close, I said, handing him a printed copy of the bylaws and my county permit. She took my key, tried to use it again, and now she's cutting my lock without authorization. Ramos flipped through the paperwork. Then he looked at Vivien. Ma'am, you got a court order for this? Her confidence faltered for half a second. It's a board directive. He shook his head. That's not the same thing. You touch that gate again, it's trespassing and destruction of property. Vivien's cheeks flushed a deep shade of red. This is ridiculous. We have authority over common areas, not private ones, Ramos interrupted. Driveways and gates on this property line? That's his. You want to challenge that, do it through civil court. Vivien opened her mouth again, but Ramos's tone softened. Ma'am, don't make me come back here over a gate. Please. He turned to me and added quietly, you might want to save that footage. Could come in handy. Oh, I've got multiple angles, I said. After the patrol car rolled off, Vivien gathered her clipboard, muttered something about uncooperative residents, and marched off. The two maintenance guys followed her like kids caught vandalizing the wrong locker. By lunchtime, everyone in the neighborhood knew about the showdown. Someone had filmed part of it and posted it in the community Facebook group with the caption, HOA President vs. Gate Guy, who's right? The comments section turned into a digital gladiator arena. Half the neighbors sided with her, but the other half, the ones tired of her constant meddling, were cheering me on like I was the underdog in a sports movie. One comment read, Finally, someone standing up to Vivien. Another said, the sheriff told her off? Wish I'd seen her face. But Vivien didn't back down. She just changed tactics. The next morning, a formal letter arrived via certified mail. It was stamped Urgent HOA Business, and printed on thick paper that smelled faintly of self-importance. Dear Mr. Hale, it began. Your property has been found in ongoing violation of Section 8.3, non-cooperative conduct with the association. Due to your refusal to comply with gate access policy, fines will accrue at $50 per day until access is granted. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. They'd invented a rule overnight. Non-cooperative conduct? That sounded like something she pulled from a political speech. So I did what any sane person would do. I sent an invoice back. Header: Reimbursement for property security upgrade due to HOA misconduct. Total due: $75 lost key fee, $120 lock replacement, $150 for unauthorized tampering attempt. Due date: end of month. I mailed it certified, same way she'd sent hers. By noon, she'd called. Her voice trembled between outrage and disbelief. "You cannot invoice the HOA, Mr. Hale." "You invoiced me first," I said. "Seems fair. We're just doing a little mutual billing." "That's not how this works." "Sure it is," I said cheerfully. "Also, since the HOA's interfering with private property, I'll be forwarding both letters to county mediation. They love this kind of thing." For a moment there was silence. Then she snapped, "You'll regret this," and hung up. I smiled. She didn't realize that threat had just written my favorite chapter yet. 2 days later, a letter from the county mediation board arrived, addressed to both of us. They'd scheduled a hearing to resolve ongoing access disputes and potential misuse of HOA authority. It was official. The empire was being audited. When the hearing day came, Vivien strutted in wearing a blazer like she was defending a Fortune 500 company. She'd even brought the 2 polo shirt board members as moral support. I showed up in jeans and a clean button-down, holding a folder with photos, receipts, and the full email chain. The mediator, a patient woman named Ellen, listened as Vivien launched into a long speech about community safety, unity, and trust. It was beautifully rehearsed, emotional, self-righteous, and completely detached from reality. When she finally finished, Ellen turned to me. "Mr. Hale, your response?" I handed over my documents and said simply, "All I did was secure my property after the HOA president admitted to taking my key without permission. Here's her email confirming it." Ellen's eyebrows rose. "You have written confirmation?" I nodded. Vivien's eyes widened. "That was taken out of context." Ellen scanned the paper silently. Then she looked up. "It says, and I quote, 'I borrowed your key to perform a property inspection.' Ms. Blackwater, you are not authorized to access private property without consent." The room went silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Ellen finally said, "The board has overstepped. The homeowner acted within his rights. All HOA fines are voided, and no further action will be taken." I wanted to clap. Instead, I just smiled and said, "Appreciate the clarification." Vivien's mouth opened, but Ellen raised a hand. "Ms. Blackwater, please refrain from contacting or attempting to access this property again. That includes the gate, yard, or any cameras on the premises." Afterward, Vivien stormed past me without a word, her heels clicking like angry punctuation marks. Marcus caught up with me in the parking lot, laughing. "You just dethroned her in front of her own kingdom." "Feels good," I said. "But she'll be back. People like Vivien don't go quietly." And I was right. That weekend, I noticed something strange. Someone had taped a new flyer to the community notice board. It read, "Emergency HOA election, vote for leadership you can trust." Below that, "Candidate for President, Barbara Knoll." Barbara was Vivien's closest friend and biggest gossip ally. It didn't take a genius to realize what this was: damage control. If Vivien's reputation had taken a hit, she'd try to re-establish control through a puppet. But what she didn't know was that I'd already made some calls of my own. The mediation hearing had sparked curiosity among a few quieter neighbors who'd been burned by HOA harassment before. They'd formed a little group chat, Neighborhood Reform. By the time Vivien's election announcement went public, my inbox was filled with screenshots, complaints, and one golden nugget: proof that Vivien had authorized maintenance funds for emergency landscaping repairs that conveniently aligned with her own backyard renovation. I grinned. She wasn't just bossy, she was sloppy. The next chapter of our feud wasn't going to be about gates or keys anymore. It was going to be about exposure, and this time she'd dig her own grave trying to bury me. You could feel the tension humming through the neighborhood that week like static before a thunderstorm. Every porch light conversation, every slow dog walk past the notice board carried the same question: what's Vivien planning next? She'd vanished from her morning patrols, no more clipboards, no more fake smiles, just whispers that she was restructuring the HOA. That suburban code for plotting revenge. But I wasn't idle either. The small, neighborhood reform group had exploded overnight. What started as a private group chat between me, Marcus, and two other neighbors became a dozen frustrated homeowners swapping stories about fines, threats, and Vivien's mysterious emergency fund. One guy, Leonard from 2 streets over, shared screenshots of his billing statement. $400 in community maintenance fees for a mulch job that never happened. Another neighbor discovered her fence height violation had been magically resolved once she donated $200 to the HOA Beautification Fund. The same fund, it turned out, that paid for Vivien's new brick patio. I stared at the photos someone had taken: high-end pavers, new outdoor furniture, fresh hydrangeas along her fence line, all funded by the same people she'd been bullying. It was genius in its simplicity and arrogance. She'd hidden her scheme in plain sight, buried beneath HOA jargon and fake invoices. I knew if we went at her head-on, she'd twist everything, cry defamation, and weaponize the bylaws. What we needed was proof, clean, undeniable, and timed perfectly. So I played it cool. I acted like nothing had changed. I waved politely when I saw her car glide by. I even complimented her ongoing leadership in the neighborhood group chat. She took the bait immediately. Within hours, she replied with a little smiling emoji and, "Glad to see we've moved past our misunderstanding, Mr. Hale." Misunderstanding? Sure, Vivien. You stole my key, tried to cut my gate, and got called out by the county. But sure, let's call it a misunderstanding. 2 days later, an email from the HOA secretary leaked, apparently by accident. It contained a scanned copy of the board's internal fund allocation spreadsheet. My guess? Vivien meant to send it to Barbara, her puppet candidate, but hit reply all instead. It was glorious. I opened the attachment and nearly choked on my coffee. Right there, line 3, landscaping, emergency drainage, $2,850. Address? Her own. Under notes, she'd typed, "Resolved personal flooding issue, community adjacent risk." Translation: my backyard puddled, so I used everyone's money to fix it. That was it, the smoking gun. The group chat went nuclear. Marcus immediately drafted a motion for a financial audit. Leonard said he had a buddy who was a CPA and offered to review the records. Within 48 hours, we had a full-blown rebellion brewing. I knew Vivien would catch wind of it soon, so I did what any reasonable person would do before a neighborhood coup: I mowed my lawn. It sounds trivial, but in HOA land, mowing your lawn isn't maintenance. It's psychological warfare. Every blade trimmed was a reminder that I could follow the rules better than she ever could. When Vivien saw me out there, she slowed her SUV to a crawl, rolled down the window, and called out, "Glad to see you're finally keeping up with community standards." I didn't even look up. Just setting a good example for the leadership. Her smile cracked just for a moment. Then she drove off. The next morning, the emergency HOA election was in full swing. The ballot listed Barbara Knoll as the sole candidate for president, along with 2 new board advisors, both of whom were Vivien's tennis friends. There wasn't a word about term limits or voting eligibility. The election notice even said, "Attendance encouraged but not required," which was HOA speak for, "We'll do whatever we want." That's when our reform group made its move. Marcus printed a dozen flyers titled, "Where Your Dues Really Go." Each one had screenshots of Vivien's invoices, side by side with county records and her backyard photos. We didn't even add commentary, just facts. Nothing spreads faster than silent proof. By noon, every mailbox post and community bulletin board had one. By 2 o'clock, half the neighborhood was standing in front of Vivien's house, pretending to walk their dogs, while peeking through the hedges. At 3, Vivien came storming out of her front door, waving one of the flyers like a burning flag. "This is libel," she shouted at no one in particular. "Slanderous misinformation." Barbara trailed behind her, looking less like a vice president in waiting and more like a deer in headlights. "Vivien, maybe we should just..." Don't tell me what to do, Vivien snapped. Then she turned toward me, because of course she did. You think this is funny, Mr. Hale? You've harassed this community for months, and now you're trying to destroy its leadership. I set down my wrench. I'd been tightening the gate hinge just to enjoy the symbolism, and said, Actually, Vivien, I'm trying to protect this community from leadership that destroys itself. That was when Marcus appeared, phone in hand, already recording. Smile for the audit, Vivien. You wouldn't dare, she hissed. He grinned. Too late. The county ethics office already received your spreadsheet. Oh, and the homeowner's petition for a vote of no confidence hit the quorum threshold this morning. It's over. The air went electric. You could see the moment she realized the power had shifted. Her little empire wasn't collapsing, it had already fallen, and she was just standing in the ruins. But Vivien wasn't one to accept defeat gracefully. She tried to pivot. You people have no idea what you're doing. Without me, this community will fall apart. I crossed my arms. Then we'll learn to live with a little chaos. Beats dictatorship. Neighbors actually clapped. Some laughed. One even shouted, Maybe now we can paint our mailboxes. Vivien's face went pale. She turned, stormed into her SUV, and slammed the door. The engine roared to life, and she sped off down the street, tires squealing, a perfect cinematic exit. The HOA meeting that night was legendary. 40 people crammed into the community center, buzzing with righteous energy. Barbara tried to call order, but her voice cracked halfway through. The treasurer resigned on the spot. Leonard's CPA friend took the floor and presented a clean, concise audit. $8,700 in emergency expenses that directly benefited Vivien's property. When Barbara tried to defend her, the crowd turned. We trusted you, one neighbor shouted. You let her steal from us. Barbara's composure crumbled. She said it was temporary. Temporary, another man said. She put in a stone patio. By the time the meeting adjourned, the board had voted unanimously to suspend Vivien pending investigation. She wasn't officially out yet, but her power was gone. The HOA email list, her favorite weapon, was locked down under new credentials. That night, Marcus dropped by my house with 2 beers and a grin so wide it practically glowed. You realize you just became the folk hero of Lakewood Pines? I didn't do much, I said. Just locked a gate. He laughed. Yeah, and then you locked her out of her own fiefdom. We sat on the porch watching the sprinkler lights shimmer across my lawn. It felt peaceful. Too peaceful. Think she'll leave it alone? Marcus asked. I shook my head. Vivien doesn't retreat. She regroups. And sure enough, I was right again. At dawn, I found an envelope taped to my gate. No postage, no return address, just my name scrawled across it in sharp black ink. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Enjoy your little victory, it read. But remember, the HOA still owns the land under your driveway. Let's see how long your precious gate lasts when that becomes a problem. I laughed softly, but it wasn't funny. Vivien wasn't done. She'd found a new angle. And if she was hinting what I thought she was about to weaponize property lines. I folded the letter, slipped it into my folder of Vivien evidence, and poured another coffee. The war wasn't over. It was just changing battlefields. Vivien's letter wasn't a threat tossed in anger. It was a declaration of war, written in cursive. I stared at it over my morning coffee, half amused, half impressed. She wasn't bluffing. The line about the HOA owning the land under my driveway was pure Vivien, part fiction, part bureaucratic poison. It sounded absurd, but with her, absurdity usually hid something real underneath. I spent the next hour digging through the county records portal, cross-referencing plat maps and property deed. My lot was privately owned from curb to fence line, but Vivien had discovered something clever. Technically, a 6-foot section of my front easement, the area where my gate posts sat, overlapped with a shared utility strip designated decades ago for future sidewalk expansion that never happened. It wasn't HOA property, but it wasn't fully mine either. Vivien's plan clicked into focus. She couldn't tear down my gate legally, but if she convinced enough people that it sat on community-controlled land, she could claim jurisdiction. I actually had to give her credit. She was pivoting from corruption to technicality. That afternoon, Marcus texted, "Vivien's holding a property review walkthrough at 5. Guess whose gate's first on the tour?" I laughed out loud. "Let her come. I'll bring the popcorn." At exactly 5, Vivien arrived in full regalia, sun hat, clipboard, and 3 bored loyalists in tow. She stood at the end of my driveway, gesturing like a realtor showing off prime real estate. "This area," she announced, tapping her pen on the concrete edge, "is part of the community's shared maintenance zone. The bylaws grant U.S. authority to regulate installations here." I leaned on the fence post, calm as ever. "Vivien, the only thing you maintain is other people's patience." Her lips tightened. "Sarcasm isn't a legal defense, Mr. Hale." "No, but documents are," I said, pulling out the printed property map. "According to county records, this area is classified as a dormant easement, not common ground. Which means it's mine to maintain until the county reclaims it. Unless you're secretly working for Public Works now." The 3 loyalists glanced at each other. You could practically see the confidence drain out of them. Vivien snapped her clipboard shut. "We'll verify that." "Please do," I said. "And while you're at it, maybe check your own property lines. I hear your new patio might be cozying up to the utility buffer." Her jaw clenched. I didn't have proof of that yet, but the flicker in her eyes told me I'd hit a nerve. By nightfall, she'd already sent another HOA bulletin. "Urgent reminder, unauthorized structures near easements may be subject to removal." She didn't name me, but everyone knew. My inbox filled with amused neighbor messages. "Vivien's losing it. Did you see the new public safety notice?" One even said, "She's measuring lawns at night again." Still, I wasn't content just reacting. If Vivien wanted to weaponize technicalities, I'd arm myself with facts sharper than any rule she could invent. The next day, I visited the county zoning office. The clerk, an older man with reading glasses and a permanent look of mild exasperation, listened as I explained the situation. He gave me a small smile halfway through. "Ah," he said knowingly. "You've got an HOA Karen, huh?" I chuckled. "You could say that." He flipped through digital maps, then printed a certified copy showing my lot boundaries, with a bold note, "Private easement under homeowner maintenance until county reclamation." Then, for good measure, he stamped it, signed it, and said, "If she argues again, tell her to take it up with us." I left that office feeling like I'd just been handed Excalibur. Sure enough, the next morning, Vivien and her entourage were back. This time, she'd brought a laser measurer and a smug grin. "I have photographic evidence," she declared. "Your gate post extends 4 inches into the shared buffer zone." 4 inches, I said. "That's your grand offense?" "Rules are rules, Mr. Hale. The HOA will be filing for forced compliance." I smiled and handed her the county-certified map. "Then you'll want to include this in your paperwork. It says the buffer is under homeowner maintenance jurisdiction, meaning, for all legal purposes, it's private." Vivien's face froze mid-sentence. "That's impossible. Would you like to read the signature? County Zoning Department, stamped yesterday." One of her bored allies actually snorted, trying not to laugh. The other whispered, "Told you not to push it." Vivien turned crimson. "This isn't over." I gave her a little half-bow. "That's what makes it fun." That afternoon, I uploaded the signed document to the community forum with the caption, "In case anyone's curious about property lines, clarity helps us all sleep better." It went viral in minutes. Neighbors flooded the comments with jokes. "Vivien measuring inches again," someone wrote. Another added, "If the HOA's paying attention to 4 inches, maybe they should start with their own accounting errors." The thread hit over 100 comments before Vivien shut down the forum entirely, citing technical difficulties. She couldn't delete my post without making herself look guiltier, so she just froze the whole board. That night, I got a knock at my door. It was Barbara, formerly Vivien's shadow, now looking like someone who'd just realized the sunburns. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. "Sure," I said, gesturing toward the porch. She sat down, fidgeting with her ring. "Look, Vivien's spiraling. She's talking about taking this to court. She even called a surveyor to prove fraud. I thought you should know." I nodded. "Appreciate the warning." Barbara sighed. "She's not doing this for the HOA anymore. It's personal now. She keeps saying you humiliated her." "Funny," I said. "I thought she humiliated herself." Barbara hesitated. "She won't stop until she feels she's won something. Just be careful." When she left, I sat there in the porch light for a while, watching the moths orbit the bulb. She was right. People like Vivien didn't seek justice. They sought validation. And when they couldn't find it, they'd burn the rules they once worshipped. 2 days later, the surveyor came. I watched from the porch as he set up his tripod, measuring tape flashing under the sun. Vivien stood beside him, arms crossed like a general inspecting enemy lines. When he finally finished, she strutted toward me with the result. "Well, Mr. Hale, looks like you're not as clever as you think. The property marker shows your gate post is indeed within the public easement zone." I tilted my head. "And who hired the surveyor?" "The HOA, naturally." I smiled. "Then the report's invalid." "What?" "You can't commission an independent survey on private property without consent from the property owner. The data's inadmissible. But thanks for confirming that you trespassed again." Her confidence shattered right there on the pavement. You can't just." "I can," I said. "And now, thanks to you, I've got grounds for an actual legal complaint. Want to play who's in violation now?" She spun on her heel and stormed off, muttering something about lawyers. That night, Marcus texted me a photo. It was from the HOA newsletter draft someone had leaked. The headline read, "Homeowner creates unsafe conditions near common property." Under it, a blurry photo of my gate. I couldn't help but laugh. Vivien was rewriting reality, but this time, no one was buying it. The comments on the leaked draft were savage. Unsafe for who? Her ego. And maybe she should install a gate around her temper. The next morning, the inevitable happened. A letter from her attorney arrived. Thick envelope, embossed letterhead, the works. It accused me of creating a nuisance barrier impeding neighborhood cohesion, and demanded immediate removal of my gate or payment of damages to HOA authority. I read it twice, set it down, and called the same zoning clerk who'd helped me before. He laughed so hard he had to put me on hold. When he came back, he said, "That letter wouldn't hold up for 5 seconds. Want me to send a counterstatement?" "Please," I said. "Make it sound fancy." The next day, Vivien received an official county letter reminding her that misrepresentation of property ownership and unauthorized surveying were potential misdemeanor offenses. The same clerk even CC'd the HOA's general email. By noon, Barbara texted, "She's gone silent." For the first time in weeks, I felt actual quiet in the air. No arguments, no flyers, no threats, just birds, sprinklers, and the sound of a queen losing her crown inch by inch. But Vivien wasn't gone. Not yet. Because 2 nights later, as I checked my gate camera footage, I saw a flicker of motion at 11:43 p.m. Someone, short, in a hooded sweatshirt, walked up to the keypad, fiddled for a moment, and then slipped something into the latch slot before hurrying away. The next morning, the gate wouldn't close properly. When I inspected it, I found the cause. The internal motor wire had been cut. She'd gone from legal warfare to sabotage. And this time, I wasn't calling the HOA. I was calling the police. There are certain sounds that wake you up faster than any alarm clock. the low hum of police radios, the crunch of boots on gravel, and the slow realization that justice might finally be warming up its engines. When I opened the door that morning, 2 sheriff's deputies were already standing at my gate, both examining the cut wire like they'd just stumbled on a crime scene from a suburban thriller. "Morning," I said, stepping outside with my coffee. "I'm guessing you're here for the sabotage report?" The taller deputy nodded. "You're Mr. Hale, right? We got your call. You said someone tampered with your gate motor?" "Someone didn't just tamper with it," I said, kneeling beside the unit. "They sliced the main control wire. Clean cut. No animal did this." The shorter deputy crouched down, whistling. "That's deliberate. Probably with wire snip. You got cameras on this?" "Front and side angles," I said. "Night vision. Want to see?" We went inside, and I pulled up the footage on my tablet. The screen flickered between grainy frames, showing the dark outline of a figure in a hoodie. The person moved fast, but there was no mistaking the familiar gait, brisk, stiff-backed, like someone walking with self-righteous purpose. I zoomed in. The face was mostly obscured, but at one point, when the intruder turned toward the sensor light, you could see a glint, a pair of big round glasses catching the glow. Vivien's trademark. The deputies exchanged looks. "Ma'am," the taller one said, "that looks like your HOA president, doesn't it?" I smirked. "That's the rumor." He sighed. "You'd be surprised how many HOA disputes end like this. People get a little too invested." I nodded. "She's been escalating for months. Took my gate key, tried to cut my lock, filed bogus complaints. This is just her next move." The deputy took down the details, then asked, "You want to press charges?" I hesitated just long enough to let the question hang in the air. "Absolutely." By afternoon, the neighborhood was buzzing again. 2 patrol cars parked outside Vivien's house for over an hour, lights flashing while officers spoke with her on the porch. From my window, I could see her gesturing wildly, pointing toward my property like she was narrating her own victim story. Marcus texted me. "They're reading her the Miranda speech." Dude. I didn't believe it until I saw the cruiser door close with her inside. The entire street fell silent. Curtains shifted. Sprinklers hissed in the distance. The Queen Bee of Lakewood Pines was finally being driven away, not in her luxury SUV, but in the back of a sheriff's car. I didn't celebrate. Not outwardly, anyway. I just poured another cup of coffee and watched the patrol car fade down the hill, the way you'd watch a storm cloud drift away. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Screenshots from the community group chat, local Facebook threads, even the neighborhood's next-door page. Someone had leaked the police report. Headline: HOA president detained after property sabotage allegations. It was everywhere, and the reactions were gold. One post said, "So that's why she canceled the bake sale." Another read, "Karma finally cut the cord." My favorite was from Barbara, "If anyone needs me, I'll be updating my resume." Still, I knew Vivien wouldn't stay quiet. People like her don't surrender, they spin. Sure enough, that evening an email went out from her personal account, subject line: "Community clarification regarding recent events." I opened it expecting denial. What I got was performance art. "Dear Lakewood Pines residents," it began. "Recent rumors circulating about my alleged arrest are being grossly exaggerated by certain individuals seeking attention. The police were merely verifying a misunderstanding involving neighborhood maintenance equipment. I remain fully committed to preserving safety and harmony within our community." She actually called cutting my gate wire maintenance equipment. It was almost impressive, like watching someone drown and insist they were swimming. Within minutes, replies poured in from homeowners who weren't buying it. One wrote, "Then why were you handcuffed?" Another, "You cut his gate wire but forgot to trim your own hedges." Someone even attached a meme of Vivien's face photoshopped onto a lawnmower. For the first time, I didn't have to say a word. The neighborhood was handling it for me. But that's when things got weird. The following day, 2 men in plain clothes showed up at my door. They weren't cops. They introduced themselves as legal consultants representing the Lakewood Pines Association. Their tone was polished, professional, and completely hollow. "Mr. Hale," one began, "we understand tensions have escalated. The board would like to resolve this matter privately, without further police involvement." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean without further embarrassment?" He smiled thinly. "Ms. Blackwater is willing to sign a formal apology if you agree to drop the complaint." "Apology?" I repeated. "For breaking into my property and vandalizing my gate?" "It was a misunderstanding," he said smoothly. Emotions were high. "You know how community disputes can get." "I do," I said. "Which is why I'm not backing down." They exchanged glances, clearly not used to someone saying no. "Then we'll have to proceed accordingly," one said finally. "Please do," I said. "Just make sure you spell my name right on the headlines." They left without another word. By evening, I learned what accordingly meant. Vivien's remaining allies on the board issued an emergency suspension of my HOA membership privileges, citing hostile behavior toward community leadership. That meant I couldn't attend meetings or vote on any motions. It was a desperate, transparent stunt, but technically allowed under their bylaws. Marcus was furious when he heard. "She's trying to silence you, man. You need to fight this." "Oh, I will," I said. "But not in her arena." I spent that night drafting a formal complaint to the state HOA regulatory board. I attached copies of every email, every violation notice, every photo, and of course, the police report. Then I hit send and went to bed with the satisfying knowledge that I'd just dropped an atomic truth bomb on Vivien's empire. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Official seal, gold trim, the works. "Dear Mr. Hale, the State Homeowners Association Oversight Committee has received your complaint and found sufficient cause to open an investigation into the Lakewood Pines Board of Directors. A compliance officer will be assigned to review financial and procedural conduct." Translation: they were sending auditors. When the inspectors arrived, the neighborhood practically lined the sidewalks to watch. Clipboards, cameras, state tags on their windbreakers. It was beautiful. Vivien tried to greet them like she was hosting a charity gala. "Welcome to Lakewood Pines, the premier example of community excellence." One inspector handed her a paper. "We're here about misappropriated funds and property interference claims." The smile didn't just fade, it imploded. I didn't see her much after that. The inspectors camped out in the clubhouse for days, poring over files. Rumors swirled like smoke. Someone said they'd found missing receipt. Someone else claimed her landscaping improvements didn't match the declared expenditures. Barbara came by midweek, nervous but relieved. "She's done, you know," she whispered. "The auditors found everything. Fake invoices, double reimbursements, even payments to her nephew's company." I raised an eyebrow. Guess the patio wasn't the only thing she built with other people's money. Barbara laughed quietly. "They're voting to remove her permanently. She's threatening to sue everyone." "Let her," I said. "She can represent herself. She's good at talking." The vote happened the next evening. Word spread fast. Unanimous removal, permanent ban from future HOA positions, and restitution pending legal review. When it was over, Marcus sent me a single message: "Check your gate cam." I opened the live feed. Vivien stood on the sidewalk one last time, staring at the gate she'd fought so hard to control. No sunglasses, no clipboard, just a defeated woman looking at the fortress that ended her reign. After a long pause, she turned, climbed into her SUV, and drove away for good. I thought that was the end. But 2 days later, a letter arrived from her attorney again. This one, though, was short and almost humble. "On behalf of Ms. Blackwater, we hereby remit payment of $345 for damages and key replacement per your previous invoices. This matter is now considered resolved." There it was, the universe's best punchline. After months of chaos, sabotage, and courtroom-level drama, she'd finally paid the lost key fee that started it all. I taped the check to my fridge like a trophy. Marcus came by that evening with a grin and 2 beers. "You keeping it as a souvenir?" "No," I said, raising the bottle. "I'm cashing it tomorrow." She wanted closure? "Let's make it official." We clinked bottles and laughed until the porch light burned out. But even as I sat there in the quiet glow of victory, I knew something deeper had shifted. Vivien's downfall wasn't just about me winning a petty feud. It was about the entire neighborhood remembering what it felt like to breathe without fear of her clipboard. The HOA finally sent out a new bulletin the next week, this time with a simple message: transparency, respect, and accountability, our new beginning. I pinned it to my corkboard, right next to Vivien's handwritten threat. They looked perfect together, the rise and fall of an empire, all contained within 2 pieces of paper. And somewhere out there, I hoped Vivien had finally learned that if you steal a man's key, you'd better be ready to pay for the lock. Peace in a neighborhood like ours is fragile. It doesn't arrive like sunlight, it creeps in like dawn through fog, hesitant and temporary. For a few glorious weeks, Lakewood Pines felt lighter. Kids played basketball in the cul-de-sac again, the Facebook group was filled with bake sale posts instead of violation notices, and the phrase, HOA inspection, no longer sent anyone into cardiac arrest. Even my gate, that aluminum monument to stubbornness, stood tall and unbothered. Every time I hit the remote and watched it swing open smoothly, I felt the kind of satisfaction that only comes after surviving a bureaucratic war. I even thought about repainting it, maybe a fresh coat of black enamel. A symbolic reset. Then came the envelope. It arrived on a Tuesday, plain white, no return address, stamped confidential legal notice. My stomach sank before I even opened it. I'd learned to recognize the smell of trouble in ink form. Inside was a copy of a civil lawsuit filed in county court. Vivien Blackwater vs. Lakewood Pines Homeowners Association, et al., 24 defendants listed by name, including me. The claim? Defamation, emotional distress, unlawful harassment, and damages to professional reputation. The amount? $250,000. I laughed at first, out loud. Not the kind of laugh that comes from joy, the kind that spills out when you realize the absurdity has circled back around to brilliance. Vivien wasn't trying to win money. She was trying to rewrite the ending. Marcus called within minute. "You got served too, right?" "Front row seat," I said. He cursed under his breath. "She's suing everyone, the whole neighborhood. Even Barbara. Her own former ally?" "Yep. She's calling it a mass conspiracy to damage her reputation." "Her reputation damaged itself," I said. "We just watched." But that was Vivien's talent, turning consequences into victimhood. The HOA called an emergency meeting that weekend. This time, the community center was packed wall to wall. The new interim president, a mild-mannered engineer named David Tran, stood at the podium like a man tasked with defusing a bomb. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I know this lawsuit is intimidating, but please remember, truth is a defense against defamation. We have records, audits, emails, and verified financial findings. Ms. Blackwater can file whatever she wants, but it doesn't make her right." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. I raised my hand. "David, does this mean we all need lawyers?" He hesitated. "Technically, no. The HOA's insurance should cover collective representation. Individually, that's your call." Marcus muttered beside me, translation, "We're screwed." But I wasn't ready to let Vivien pull everyone back into her vortex. Not after everything. So I stood up. "Look," I said, loud enough for the murmuring to stop. "This is what she does. She thrives on chaos. She doesn't care if she loses. She just wants to make everyone miserable enough to wish they'd left her alone. We can't play her game again. We need to flip it." Barbara spoke from the back. "How?" I smiled. "By giving her exactly what she wants, attention, but on our terms. That got their attention. I spent the next few days assembling something I called the Transparency Project. It was simple. Every single HOA document, email, and record related to Vivien's presidency would be compiled, scanned, and uploaded to a public Google Drive link. Complete transparency. Nothing hidden, nothing exaggerated, just truth in all its boring, devastating glory. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. I wanted to disarm her. Because you can't sue people for defamation when the defamation is documented fact. When I sent the proposal to David, he hesitated. You realize she'll claim that's harassment. Let her, I said. We're not publishing opinions. We're publishing evidence. To his credit, he approved it. Within a week, the link went live. The files were meticulous, scanned receipts, budget reports, correspondence logs, even Vivien's infamous landscaping emergency invoices. Every shady corner of her tenure illuminated under digital fluorescent light. The reaction was immediate. Neighbors shared the link everywhere. In local Facebook groups, Reddit threads, even the town's community bulletin. Comments flooded in. How did she get away with this? And she billed the HOA for her dog groomer? By day 3, the document had over 5,000 views. Vivien's attorney sent a cease and desist letter within hours. David forwarded it to me with a note. Congratulations, you're officially her favorite person again. But it was too late. The truth had gone viral in our small suburban ecosystem. Every local gossip circle, every church potluck, every yoga class was buzzing about Vivien's downfall again. This time, though, she couldn't control the narrative. Then, just when it seemed she might finally crawl back under her rock, the story took a turn. A local news station picked it up. The segment aired under the headline, HOA President Accused of Financial Misconduct Files Lawsuit Against Her Own Neighbors. They interviewed David, a few residents, and, to my surprise, Barbara. She spoke calmly, eyes steady on the camera. We just wanted fairness. No one wanted to hurt Vivien. We just wanted accountability. Vivien, of course, refused to appear on camera, but she emailed the station a statement calling the community a hostile environment poisoned by vindictive individuals. That was her fatal mistake. Because when you publicly accuse 24 people of a conspiracy, you don't look like a victim, you look like a headline waiting to implode. The county court dismissed her lawsuit within 2 weeks. Lack of merit, the order read. Plaintiff's claims are unsupported by evidence and contradicted by publicly available documentation. She didn't even make it to trial. When the news hit, I was sitting on my porch again, watching the sunset filter through the oak trees. Marcus walked over with a beer and a grin. You did it again, he said. I didn't do anything, I replied. Vivien did what Vivien always does. She overplayed her hand. He laughed. You're like the neighborhood's Batman, man. Calm, sarcastic, always one step ahead. More like a guy who doesn't like being told what color to paint his fence, I said. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about fences anymore. The whole saga had turned into a kind of morality play, a reminder of how easily control masquerades as order, and how quickly one person's obsession with rules can rot a community from the inside. The HOA held a final debrief meeting a month later, mostly to close the book on the Blackwater era. David read through the financial summaries, the investigation findings, and finally, a motion to dissolve the Special Compliance Committee Vivien had created. The motion passed unanimously. Then he surprised everyone. The board would like to recognize a resident whose persistence and level-headedness helped bring us through this mess, he said. Mr. Hale, would you be willing to serve as our next vice president? The room erupted in applause. I nearly choked on my water. Wait, what? No. Absolutely not. Marcus laughed from the back. Come on, man, poetic justice. But I shook my head. I've spent enough time fighting one HOA president. I'm not about to become the next one. Still, the thought lingered. Maybe part of me liked the idea of keeping Vivien's ghost in check. A week later, I compromised. I joined the advisory committee, the group that reviewed new proposals before they hit the main board. I figured it was a safe middle ground, enough to make sure no future tyrant rose unnoticed, but far enough from the throne to keep my sanity. For a while, life finally went quiet. The gate stayed locked, the lawn stayed mowed, and the HOA emails stopped reading like courtroom transcripts. But one night, as I took out the trash, I saw something odd on my porch, a small padded envelope. No return label, just my name. Inside was a single silver key. No note. No explanation. Just the key, identical to the one Vivien had stolen months ago. For a moment, I stared at it under the porch light, the metal glinting cold in my hand. I almost laughed. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe she'd mailed it as her twisted version of closure. Or maybe, and this was the scarier thought, she still had a copy and wanted me to know she hadn't really gone away. I put the key in my drawer next to the old violation notices, the HOA letters, and that check she'd written for the lost key fee. Vivien might have been gone from Lakewood Pines, but I knew she was still out there somewhere, rewriting the story in her head, telling herself she'd been wronged. And if she ever decided to come back? Well, let's just say this time, I'd be ready long before she found another lock to steal. It started again on a humid Thursday night in June, 6 months after Vivien's grand exit and the end of her lawsuit fiasco. The neighborhood had long since returned to normal. Kids on bikes, barbecue smoke wafting from driveways, the HOA newsletter full of dull but harmless updates about recycling bins and pet waste etiquette. I had almost forgotten what it felt like to live without the constant buzz of tension. Almost. That evening, I was in my garage polishing the gate's keypad casing, a small ritual of mine, equal parts maintenance and quiet victory lap. That gate had survived more drama than a soap opera. Marcus was over, drinking from a can of root beer, half teasing me as usual. "You still baby that thing like it's a sports car," he said. "After everything it's been through?" I replied. "It's basically a monument to persistence." He grinned. "You should put up a plaque. Here stood the last nerve Vivien Blackwater ever touched." We both laughed. It was the kind of laugh that carried relief. Then my phone buzzed. An email alert from the HOA inbox I managed as part of my advisory role. The subject line made my skin prickle. Subject: Urgent notice. Request for temporary gate access, V. Blackwater. I opened it. The email was short, formal, and polite, which made it all the more chilling. "Dear HOA Board, I will be returning briefly to Lakewood Pines this weekend to retrieve personal items stored in my former residence. I require temporary access through the front gate. Please advise on proper procedure. Regards, Vivien Blackwater." Marcus leaned over my shoulder, reading it twice. "No way. She's coming back." "Apparently," I said. "Think she's serious?" "Oh, she's always serious," I muttered. It wasn't illegal for her to come back. Her house had been foreclosed and bought by new owners, but apparently, some of her personal items were still locked in storage on the property. I could have ignored it, but something told me not to. Vivien didn't do anything, briefly. The next morning, the new owners, the Rosens, a young couple from out of town, called me in a panic. "We just got a letter from someone named Vivien saying she wants to pick up boxes from the garage," Mrs. Rosen said. "Do we let her?" "Absolutely not without supervision," I said. "I'll handle it." So Saturday morning, I stationed myself by my gate, phone ready, cameras running, just in case this little retrieval turned into another headline. At 10:04 a.m., her silver SUV appeared. Same model, same vanity plate. Vivien 1. It rolled up slowly, the engine purring like a cat that still thought it owned the couch. When she stepped out, I was almost startled by how different she looked, or maybe how much time had caught up with her. No clipboard. No pearls. Just dark glasses and a brittle smile. "Well," she said, "you look pleased with yourself." "I'm just surprised you didn't bring a news crew," I replied. She ignored the jab. "I'm here for my belongings." Nothing more. Good. Let's keep it that way. We walked together up the street, the tension between us thick as summer air. Some neighbors peeked through curtains, others lingered in driveways pretending to trim hedges. Vivien's return had the magnetic pull of a solar eclipse, dangerous but impossible to look away from. When we reached the Rosens' house, they were waiting on the porch. I introduced everyone, keeping things civil. Vivien gave a tight nod. "Thank you for allowing this," she said to them, voice brittle with forced grace. The Rosens had already moved her boxes into the driveway. Cardboard neatly stacked, sealed, labeled with handwriting that screamed control. Garden tools, archives, financial. She walked over to them like she was approaching relics of her former kingdom. For a moment she just stood there, fingertips brushing one of the boxes, face unreadable. Then she sighed, not with remorse but with bitterness. "You know," she said softly, "this neighborhood was better when people respected rules." "Or feared you," I said. Her head snapped up. "You think you won, don't you?" "I didn't have to," I said calmly. "You lost all by yourself." She smiled, but it wasn't kind. "You're smug, Mr. Hale. You always were. The quiet ones usually are." "Quiet's just what talking people call thinking," I said. She gave a dry laugh. "You know, it's funny, after everything, I don't even hate you. You were simply inevitable. Every order breeds its rebellion." "Then maybe next time, pick better orders," I said. She didn't reply. Instead, she motioned for the movers she'd brought to load the boxes into her SUV. It took maybe 10 minutes. When they were done, she turned back toward me, a strange flicker in her eyes, half defeat, half something else. "I suppose you think you've changed this place," she said. "I didn't have to," I said. "The neighborhood changed itself when it stopped being afraid of you." Her lips parted as if to retort, but nothing came out. For the first time since I'd known her, Vivien Blackwater looked speechless. Then she did something that genuinely caught me off guard. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "I believe this belongs to you," she said, holding it out. Inside was the original brass key. The one she'd stolen months ago, the spark that ignited everything. I stared at it for a long second. "You kept it all this time." "I like keeping things," she said flatly. "They remind me who I was." "Some people just call that evidence," I said. Her faint smile vanished. "You're still clever. Enjoy it while it lasts." With that, she climbed into her SUV, shut the door, and drove away without another word. I thought that was the end of it. Really, I did. But Vivien never left quietly. 2 days later, the local paper ran a small column in the community section. "Former HOA president donates $5,000 toward neighborhood beautification." There was a photo, Vivien, smiling stiffly, handing a check to the town's parks department. Marcus texted me, "She's trying to rewrite her legacy." I replied, "Let her. It's the first time she's ever spent her own money." But that evening, something unexpected happened. Barbara knocked on my door, holding a manila envelope. "Found this in the old HOA storage cabinet," she said. Vivien must have forgotten it. Inside were pages of old notes, handwritten agendas, private memos, even drafts of letters she'd never sent. Most were petty, reminders about lawn inspections or committee rosters. But one line near the bottom of a torn notebook page made me pause. It read, "Sometimes I wish they'd see I only wanted it to look perfect because I couldn't fix anything else." For the first time, I saw Vivien not as a villain, but as someone who'd mistaken control for stability, who thought keeping everyone in line might keep her own life from unraveling. I closed the notebook quietly. "Guess even tyrants have reasons." Barbara nodded. "Still doesn't excuse it." "No," I said. "But maybe it explains it." That night, I sat on the porch again, watching the lights shimmer on the lake. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and peace, that rare, suburban kind you only appreciate after chaos. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the brass key. It gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a relic from a war that felt both ridiculous and important. I didn't throw it away. I didn't frame it either. I just set it on the porch railing, right next to my coffee mug, and let it sit there as a reminder that even the smallest things, a key, a rule, a spark, can unravel entire kingdoms. Marcus wandered over an hour later, holding 2 beers. She really gone this time? Yeah, I said. But she left her shadow. He laughed. You think she'll try to run another HOA somewhere else? Maybe, I said. But she'll find someone like me waiting there too. We clinked bottles and watched the gate swing shut one last time. And for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like a boundary. It felt like closure.